Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a deep dive into the absolutely bananas finale of It, Welcome to Derry. This finale was packed with blood, lore, some crazy moments, but it also sets the stage for what may be the most ambitious expansion of the It's mythology yet, which is introducing a time paradox that can change everything we know about the creature. With all that being said, it is time to float and unpack one of the best finales I've seen this year. Full spoilers ahead. So admittedly, after watching this episode a few times at this point, this build up to finding It remains my least favorite part of the finale. Starting with our trio of kids, their scenes felt tonally off. We'll get back to that in a second, but I want to talk about Lily and her dagger subplot. Now, remembering this was introduced back in episode 5 with it being this big mystery type of energy, it didn't really fully deliver for me. Her breaking free of its hold so quickly was just underwhelming, and she never really got her big solo moment to maybe use a dagger against it that I thought that we were headed towards. Now, speaking back to the tonal shift, the girl's subplot to me just felt off up until this point in the episode compared to the tension and the cosmic horror that was going on with Pennywise. Now, the stuff with the adults were okay, especially with seeing Dick Hallorann using his powers, but it was definitely exposition heavy. The scenes load us with lore, its realm, the Matern root, the dagger, and the deadwood tree, which is great for Stephen King fans like myself, but maybe too dense to introduce in the middle of your finale. I think my biggest issue and what it boils down to is that these plots and the build up to the climax, it doesn't have much of Pennywise being involved in these moments. I mean, for me, every time Bill Skarsgård shows up on screen, it's just electric, but the non-Pennywise stuff, it didn't match the same energy that he was giving. This stretch of the episode is Pennywise free for a solid 10 minutes, and I felt it. But luckily, again, it was about 10 minutes or so in the episode, so it wasn't so bad that it took me out of the episode. But here's where things hit on another level, and all of our characters step up, and we get to see Pennywise and another surprise character take center stage. Now, Pennywise, being Pennywise, decides to take this opportunity to play a game of hide and seek as he's toying with them and running around in the snow, disappearing and reappearing until it sneaks right behind them and snatches up Marge. It's here that the theory that's been floating, pun intended, online of who Marge becomes in the future, as her last name is revealed as Marge Tozier.
First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes Richie in the baby carriage.
Who we know is a part of the Losers Club in the future, but Pennywise could stop her future from happening if he kills her now. Pennywise shows her a missing sign of Richie's face. Time is different for Pennywise. It knows that it dies in the future because of the losers, which shows that time isn't a straight line for it. Its death could be its birth, and it experiences all time as in the past, present, and the future. As Pennywise mentions, it's about to end this curse of time and kill Marge, but first he tells her the same thing he told Richie 27 years from now.
Beep, beep, Margie.
Now, this whole reveal kind of reminded me of Stephen King's 11/22/63, which, if you all do not know, is a story about a time traveler who attempts to prevent the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Now, obviously, this is different circumstances, but the idea of someone traveling through time to prevent a death, in this case, it preventing its own death. By the way, fun fact, in the story 11/22/63, the main character Jake actually passes through Derry at some point in the story and actually interacts with Bev and also, guess who? Richie, which may not be a coincidence. I wonder if the writers of this show got the idea of having it being in this Terminator-like situation and trying to kill Marge from the book 11/22/63, with Richie being a part of that particular story and having a small inclusion in that. It also makes me think about it capturing Will and knowing that he'll become Mike Hanlon's dad in the future. Now, saying that out loud, now knowing what we know, you would think that it would have been more proactive in its attempts of killing Marge with the whole eye scene from a couple episodes ago and just putting Will under the deadlights, but being more aggressive and actually killing them would have made more sense. Now, I don't recall this element being a part of its existence sense in the book or the films, but it makes sense to me thinking about it. Considering it's been around billions of years and comes from a void dimension where time and space operates on a completely different set of rules, I buy into this new set of lore of the creature. I'm a sci-fi lover, so this new wrinkle of time paradox in a way is beyond compelling to me. As we'll discuss later, this also sets up the next 2 seasons. But as I digress, back to the scene. Quick post-edit insert here. So as I was editing this video, I kept thinking to myself, where in this season did it say something about future events? And then it hit me. Back in episode 2, when it disguised itself as Ronnie's mom, it had mentioned that Hank was gonna fry. Now, obviously, he didn't fry. Thank goodness Hank survives. We'll talk about that later in the breakdown. But that would have been potentially in reference to Hank being in the black spot later in the season. Now, the next time it predicted something from the future was in episode 4 when we saw Will and Leroy on their fishing trip. Remembering that it was disguised as Leroy and when he held Will under the water and told him that he would burn too. Now, that could have been in reference to later on in the season at the black spot, but as I said in that particular individual breakdown, it's likely predicting the future to what happens to Will burning brutally in a fire, which was mentioned in the book, but also mentioned in It Chapter 1 by Mike Hanlon, who is his son. So this moment of it basically being an omnipresence, being everywhere at once, doesn't just play into seasons 2 and 3, but it also opens the door to the idea of it being alive even after the events of It Chapter 2. Crazy stuff, but I'm going to finish editing this video. I hope you all are enjoying the breakdown this far. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and enjoy the rest of the breakdown. As Pennywise goes to kill Marge, it freezes mid-air like it did back in episode 5. Marge rejoins the others as the rest of the kids drop from the air, including Will. The adults arrive and everything seems fine as they guide the other kids to safety. Now, Tanya and Leroy go together to place the dagger into the deadwood tree to lock its cage again. Now, as they almost reach the tree, the military shoot at them, injuring Leroy and shooting Tanya in the neck, which unfortunately he dies, as the others go to help, but they're split up by the gunfire. As the soldiers close in on Leroy, he gives Will the dagger to bury it, but he's scared. It's here we get a call back from their argument from a few episodes ago about Will not being his dad. Leroy reassures Will that he doesn't need to be his dad, he just needs to be himself, and Leroy loves him. As we watch Will and the others use the fog as cover and go to bury the dagger together. Now Shaw sees Pennywise frozen on the ice as we cut to Pennywise to see what stopped him from killing Marge, and this is where things get weird. Pennywise sees himself in a wagon and is being called Bob and surrounded by Bob's friends and Ingrid. Pennywise is confused as hell as to why they keep calling him Bob.
I am a god, an eater of worlds.
This surreal detour is the type of weird and wacky stuff that I loved about this finale, and some of the weird creative swings really worked for me. Now back with the kids, they approach the tree, but Will is stopped in his tracks and begins running back into the opposite direction because, again, remember, the dagger wants to go back home and not be in this tree as we watch them work together to moving closer to it. Meanwhile, back with Shaw, he comes face to face with Pennywise, this being his first time since seeing it since he was a kid back in 1908. As Shaw tells Pennywise he'll fix whatever Halloran has done to it. Now the soldiers find Halloran in the van and they grab him, breaking his hold that he had on it inside of its head. Now back in its mind, it realizes Dick Halloran has lost some control and kicks the shit out of Dick Halloran as he goes flat out of the wagon and back into reality. That was so damn cool to see Dick Halloran using his shine ability on it, showing the peak of his powers. Which I wonder if the matern root actually enhances his powers, but again, I just love that scene. Now Shaw tells Pennywise, who's now unfrozen, that it's free to go. Pennywise smiles and starts to leave, but smells something familiar on Shaw and it's Shaw's fear. Pennywise never forgets to smell and turns into Shaw's nightmare as the skeleton man from when he was a kid, and finally we get to see the dumbass Shaw get killed by it as it eats his face. Now admittedly, I wish that Shaw's death had a little bit more screen time. We could have basked in the glory a little bit more, but I also wish that Colonel Fuller and Bauer and the rest of the racist cowards that were a part of the burning of the black spot were killed off in this finale, but at least Shaw got what he deserved after being the cause of all the madness going on in Derry by attempting to free it to begin with. Now, skipping and smiling while running past the adults to get to finally breaking free of Derry, we see Leroy is trying to convince the soldiers to stopping it, but they don't listen. Instead of standing by helpless, and finally Leroy, out of all of them, decides to not follow the orders for once, as him and the rest of the adults fight back and take the soldiers' weapons by using hand-to-hand combat. You know, there was a little corny, that scene, but finally seeing the adults, particularly Leroy, going against the orders, and also Hank finally growing a spine and doing something was satisfying to watch. Now the kids see Pennywise is about to escape as Pennywise waves goodbye to the losers until Leroy shoots bullets right into its head, blowing it into pieces. Now as its head regrows, Leroy is out of ammo as Pennywise counters with the deadlights. Pennywise now crawling towards the children as they try with all their strength to put the dagger into the tree. Now this is where things got me in the feels as Rose senses and Halloran sees her ancestors, the war chief, and she provides the kids with the extra help that they need in returning a spirit who can help them, and it's our knight in shining armor, Rich. Again, this moment literally gave me chills, especially with that score playing in the background. Also knowing that Andy Muschietti directed this episode, was it just me or did some of these slow motion moments remind you all of like the Flash being in the Speed Force? Now one of my favorite moments is Rich running to help the others and he gives Pennywise the finger. As Pennywise is now desperate, we get to see one of the coolest transformations in the entire show. And that is Winged Pennywise, which is a great callback to it in the novel where Mike Hanlon sees a giant bird form. As it closes in on the kids, but it's too late as they get the dagger into the tree and relock its cage, I want to acknowledge just how big in scope and scale this episode got as we get to see the best visual effect, which was a chef's kiss where the blast kicks Pennywise back, was just gorgeous to look at. Look, there's been a lot of talk about the overuse of CGI in this show, and there's been some spots where it hasn't looked good, and I've pointed that out throughout my several breakdowns, but this episode, and this moment in particular, was flawless with the visual effects. Shout out to the VFX team, and maybe one of the best use of CGI in Andy Muschietti's direction that I've ever seen. It's here we get to see all the different forms that it has taken this season, as its true form appears as the Deadlights, as it leaves them with one last thing.
Lively crowd.
And it retreats to hibernate for the next 27 years. The chaos has finally come to an end as the kids acknowledge the presence that helped them, and they know it was Rich who helped them at the end. As we end this scene with seeing Rose mourning her nephew, Daniel. Now it's time for the tissues to come out as we're now at Rich's funeral, and here's where the waterworks hit. As we watch, Marge shares what friendship means, and this is where the emotions came out for me. As we can see Rich's spirit with his arms over his dad's shoulder and his head on Will's shoulder as Marge leaves his drumsticks on his casket. Now Dick Halloran sees the pain Rich's parents are in and decides to give them something to uplift them. Halloran delivers one of the series' most touching lines, telling Rich's parents that the hand they feel is their son and that he'll always be with them. Yeah, that moment hit me right in the feels. As we come to the end with more moments of closure, as we see Marge sees Rich plane has finally made it to Main Street like he always wanted, and after avoiding going to her father's grave, we see Lily finally goes and she shares that she's better now and that she's also made some new friends. I'm so glad the theory people had about her ending up back into the asylum and getting a lobotomy performed on her did not come true, because that little girl went through hell this season and she deserves some damn peace. Now back at the hangout spot, we find our losers overlooking Derry where things are back to normal. Now it's here that Marge tells Lily about what Pennywise told her about Richie and his friends killing it in the future, and again how its death is also its birth. Now in this moment, this is where the idea of how and why we need more seasons. Now Marge tells Lily that since time works differently for it and it seems to be in some time loop, it can go back in the past and kill their parents to stop it from being killed in the future, like what it was trying to do with Marge. We watch as Lily says that this is going to be someone else's fight now, and ladies and gentlemen, this is our entry into season 2 and 3 of It, Welcome to Derry. Now, besides expecting to see more of Bob Gray and Ingrid and Shaw and Rose when they were younger, I would expect that we're going to probably see our new version of the Losers' parents, like Maddie's parents, Phil, Teddy, Marge, Lily, and others, up against it, taking us into 1935 with the Bradley Massacre and also back to 1908 with the Ironworks explosion. Now look, it's going to be a tough task to recapturing the magic of this season's cast, but hell, I didn't think it was possible after the cast of 2017 It and 2019 film, but here we are. They always manage to get incredible casts for all these projects this far, including the return of Bill Skarsgård, so I have all the faith in the world that when we get season 2 and 3, we're going to be just in love with that cast as we were with the cast that we got so far. Now back at the Hanlons, Dick Halloran is there to say his goodbye. The tea that Rose gave him worked and he no longer hears the voices. Now he's headed out of Derry to go work at a hotel as a chef, as this is a reference to his next chapter at the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. Thinking back on it, it's bittersweet because while he survived this interdimensional nightmare here in Derry, spoiler alert, we know that unfortunately he dies at the hands of a possessed Jack Torrance with an axe. It's a cruel foreshadowing, but it makes his goodbye feel even heavier. We see Hank leaves with Ronnie and thanks Charlotte for all of her help. We learn that Leroy made a deal with the military that as long as he stays quiet about everything, he's able to leave on an honorable discharge. Rose offers Charlotte and Leroy a spot with the children of Matern and also offers them her farm, the same one we saw Leroy have back in It Chapter 1. But it's here we see that Leroy kindly declines her initial offer. Now we cut to seeing Will and Ronnie share their own goodbyes, as they talk about what happens when you leave Derry and the memories fade until Ronnie does something unforgettable, and that is she gives him a kiss. Another bittersweet moment where we know distance and time will pull them apart, but also that for Will, this will be a defining memory. Now the Hanlons are about to leave Derry, but Charlotte stops. She's reconsidering Rose's offer, and against all logic, them surviving it, the Air Force, Shaw, and even the racism that remains in the town, they ultimately decide to stay. Again, this decision is insanity to me, but narratively speaking, we know that they have to stay in Derry because of what happens to them in the future. Now, as Will writes Ronnie a letter and will continue to do so she won't forget him, as we see her and her father smartly leaving Derry to go to Montreal. I'm so glad that both of these families managed to survive the terrors of it, at least for now, but admittedly, I do feel bad for the grandmother of Ronnie and the mother of Hank, who's still in Derry. I guess they just forgot about her, but jokes aside, as It, Welcome to Derry ends with Chapter 1. Now we cut to a mid-credit scene where we find Ingrid in the asylum begging that they listen to her about what happened to her father and that the wolves are coming for her, as they calm her down by playing the same music we heard her playing in the future in It Chapter 2. Now, speaking of the future, we flash forward to October 1988, 26 years later, where we get the return of the same actress who played Ingrid in It Chapter 2, who's now painting a picture of her papa. She hears someone screaming for help in the hallway as Ingrid goes to see what's all the fuss about, and she sees that Elfrida March is dead after hanging herself. Now, this is Beverly's mom, and her father pushes her off, and we see and get the return of Sophia Lilith back in the role as Beverly. As Ingrid and Beverly look at each other, and she tells Bev her famous lines that she said to Lily all those years ago.
Don't be sad. You know what they say about Derry. No one who dies here ever really dies.
Now, for those who remember, this scene is a direct reference to It Chapter 2, where Beverly and her father blamed her for her mother's suicide.
I can still smell her perfume. And she'd still be alive if it wasn't for you.
Mama was sick. You know, that's why she did what she did.
She did what she did because she was embarrassed to be your mother.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the official ending of Season 1 of It, Welcome to Derry. The show also didn't come without its flaws. As I mentioned in the past, the CGI wasn't always the best, especially with episode 3 with the cemetery scene. That comes to mind as one of the worst scenes of the show. The story wasn't completely bulletproof at times, and characters like Lily and others felt a little bit forgotten at points. Some of the writing and dialogue wasn't always on point. Some things felt a bit convenient, like Rose's tea to stop the noise that Halloran was hearing, or the lack of impact of the deadlights. Also, speaking to the finale, I wish it was a little bit more brutal and gory as episode 7 was. Like, I thought the patty cakes was going to bite the dust. I thought Fuller was going to bite the dust. I thought the racists were going to die. But again, they kept the brutality and the death toll a little bit lower than I was anticipating. Now, speaking of loose ends, I wish we could have gotten a little bit more of Maddie's home life, and I also want to know just how long Hank and Ingrid were in a relationship, and I'm very curious to know, like, what did the government have to say about half of the Air Force base being killed in Derry after this secret mission? But overall, I walked away from this series with way more positives than I did negatives. So the $1 million question is, what did you all think about this finale? In the next few days, I'll be sharing some more videos surrounding the show, like my top favorite episodes, my favorite It forms, so keep an eye out for that. But I want to know, what did you all think about the show? What was your favorite episode, your favorite moment, favorite character, favorite It transformation? What worked, what didn't work as far as the season goes, and what do you all hope to see next? But in particular, what did you all think about the finale? Do you all think like me that it stuck the landing? What worked, what didn't work for you in the finale? What was some of your favorite moments of the finale? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. In my coverage of this entire season, do me a favor, hit the like button. It really goes a long way. And also when you're on YouTube and you hit the like button, there's a hype button that pops up, which allows this video to spread to new viewers. Also, if you all can hit the share button, share this video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about the show. It would mean the world to me. And last but not least, consider sticking around. If you all had a good time, if you all love this type of breakdowns, and not just for It, we're still covering Pluribus, we're covering the next chapter of Stranger Things. There's tons of movies I continue to cover on my channel, so if that sounds like something you all enjoy, consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today. Now, for my podcast listeners out there, I appreciate the listeners on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you all get your podcasts from. Do me a favor, let me know your thoughts about everything we discuss. Also, consider sharing the podcast and leave a review, leave a rating. I would appreciate that. It would mean the world to me. Alrighty, y'all, until next time, it's a goodbye for now, but we still got many things to look forward to, especially in 2026. But again, I thank you all for the support. Remember to stay safe out there. Remember, you all are awesome. But also remember, if you see kids missing and if you see a creepy clown running around, or should I say floating around, that is your cue to leave the damn town. Alrighty, y'all, I'll see you again soon.